This is for the brothers who ain't here. Hey, man, you pouring all our wine. This is for the brothers who ain't here. This is for the brothers who ain't here. For the strong brothers missing in action. Mentally and physically. Somebody tell me what happened. Like my main man, Big Willie Grant, who was shot in the back by two New York City cops the day before his 21st birthday. And remember that dime store pimp, Smooth Black Daddy? He had 7 children by 6 different women. And the brother never got married. Yo, ain't 3 of his kids on crack? But Shaka Hannibal found strangled in his crib after coming home from a black knee enforcement. And from a man out of Riverspoon, remember Larry? Yeah. He worked his way through college, then he tried to marry some Caucasian woman. Too bad. She was the horse next door. So this is for the brothers who ain't here. For the strong brothers missing in action. For the brothers, that's right, the brothers who ain't here.
All right. This show is dedicated to the brothers who ain't here, and that's a group of my kids, the Northeast Street Dudes, who put that together. And we got a very special show today. Of course, I'm Harold Bell, and this is the Legends of Inside Sports and the Way We Were. We want to continue to look at the state of Black America. Just recently, a group came out, called themselves the Policy Institute, came out with a report that said Black folks for the past 50 years have made no progress when it comes to employment, education, the criminal justice system. We're talking about 50 years, 1968, when we lost our Prince of Peace, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. There's a lot of misinformation going on about how much progress we have made. I'm trying to figure out where is this all coming from? Because if you've been here as long as I have, and you're talking about 50 years, I've seen no progress. Yeah, it's camouflage. Yeah, it looks like we made progress. A black man today is still making half of what a white man makes in salary. You hear what I'm saying? As we fight for equal rights for those who don't look like us or those who are not like us, we're not making any progress. And joining me today is a dear friend, old friend, a native Washingtonian, former student athlete in the D.C. public schools, went on to become an educator, got his master's, his Ph.D., taught in the system, was an administrator, assistant superintendent, athletic director, you name it. He's done it all. I'd like to welcome to the Legends of Inside Sports, my dear friend, Dr. Gilbert, Dr. Gilbert Hoffman. How you doing, Gil?
I'm doing fine, Harold, and thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Man, that's nothing. You know, when I sit here and I think about the things that I'm trying to do now, I think about your late wife, Connie. How I would always call you guys, ask how to spell this,
Right,
definition of this. Right. Not only was she helpful, but she was a big critic.
Yeah.
But it was constructive criticism, and that's what I miss, man. And I know you miss her.
I do.
You and your children and grandchildren. You know, she was a beautiful lady, a native Washingtonian also. Gil, when we take a look at what's happening uh, in our city, in our around our country today, as it relates to the state of Black America, where do you see us being a native Washingtonian, being an educator, being a student athlete? How do what progress have you seen?
How it's minimal. I think what you said earlier about it's a camouflage. I mean, it, in some ways, it's made to look as though we have progressed. When you look at the whole picture, we really have not. Um, sure, there have been spots here and there that look promising, but as I said, when you look at everything and the different areas, the big picture, I wonder sometimes if what we used to say, you know, years ago, if we're not hustling backwards, you know, and it's kind of disappointing. It's disappointing in this day and age when things should be better. Um, Education, which is my field, is a case in point. We are one of the last countries, especially when you consider our economic level. One of the last countries when it comes to academic achievement. Yeah, we have spots here and there, but overall, our children are doing poorer on tests than they did years ago. There's more remedial um, types of approaches needed now than before. So it's just kind of uh, disconcerting, and it just doesn't give you that feeling of we are ready, we can progress. You know, you just in some ways it's depressing.
Yeah. You know, Gil, and the best example is that is right here in the DMV. When we look at what's happening in the educational system in the DC public schools, what's happening in Prince George's County, where we see that they're allowing young African American people of color to graduate and don't deserve to graduate. What are you doing? You're putting our kids at risk when you put them out in the street without an education. You know, you're setting them up for the next phase, for failure in the next phase of life, phase of life where it's gonna be jail. Yeah. You know, it's gonna be jail. And one of the things that is said in that report about our lack of progress, it says today that it does not matter a person of color having a high school education or college education. There's still no jobs available out there for them. So, you know, we're talking about, we are running way behind, Gil.
We are.
And when I look at it, I look at black leadership. And that's why we think we made progress, because now we got chiefs of police. Now we got congressmen, congresswomen. But Gil,
it's misleading.
Very, very misleading.
Yes, I'm inclined to agree. There's just too many of us falling by the wayside. Too many of us, and we need to search for answers, and we need to implement them. So often we have these discussions and convene conferences and panels. And there's a lot of talk about this and that, and this is what we should do, and it ends there. It ends there. I mean, for example, the number of African American males who have been killed, and in some cases by the law, by officials, by policemen,
people that's supposed to be protecting
us. And then when you look at the record, how many of them have really been punished as a result of that? And you come up with zero. That's sad, because that in a way makes law enforcers feel that they have a license to do whatever they think they ought to do.
And Gil, you got an investment. We're talking about you got children that work in the system. You got grandchildren who are in the school system in both D.C. and Maryland. So you got an investment in this, and not only have you not only talked the talk, but you have walked the walk.
Yeah.
And now you look, like Big Gregory say, man, we are on the way out and not on the way in. And I get tired of hearing people talking about children first. You make yourself first. Once you get there, you forget about our children.
That's true. And it's funny you mentioned that, but when you look, especially at school budgets, one of the first things to be cut are those things that help the children. And those things that are reinforcing to children. And it's sad. It's really sad.
I my history. I done spent 50+ years working in the war zones of the inner city, and I've seen it up close and firsthand. What disturbs me is that I'm seeing this whole thing be recycled. We're talking about officer friendly. I mean, we were doing that back in the 60s when Mayor Walter Washington brought Pat Murphy from New York City, where he was the commissioner of the police, and he's the godfather of community, officer of community policing. And when he came here, one of the first things that he did was make sure that he had a meeting with the roving leaders once a month. You understand? He brought Walter Washington brought Patrick Murphy, which was a great move in 1967, and I had just joined the roving leader program. And when Patrick Murphy came to town, one of the first things he told Walter Washington, I want to meet with the roving leaders. So when the riots broke out, Gil, we were prepared. You understand? We were prepared for the streets. That's why there were so few deaths in Washington, D.C., because we had people like Tillman O'Brien, assistant chief. We had Luke Moore out there walking the streets with me and Willie Wood. So those things you don't see today. These guys that call themselves gangbusters or roving leaders now, they scared to even go into the communities to talk to our young people. And then, but the first thing you see on TV, which I had just written an article, fake news. Fake news. NBC did a whole thing on the uprising, 1968 uprising in Washington, D.C., but they had nobody on their staff that was here during that time. And no black.
See, you hit on something that's been very important to me, and that is the institutional history. It can't be overemphasize the importance of having that. What is past is prologue. If you don't have that, and we don't have it, I mean, those people, like you mentioned, Luke Moore and some of the others who were around then, they're not here, but more importantly, others have not been trained to carry the mantle,
to pick the ball, pick the ball up and run with it, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have a tremendous disadvantage, and of course, an alternative to that is training. But then the people who do the training have to know what's necessary.
That's right.
They have to know.
Yeah. The training is piss poor when it comes to community relations as it relates to the criminal justice system, policemen on the beat who don't have a clue. You should have guys on the beat who grew up in that particular community, man, that know how to relate to those individuals. And that's exactly what Pat Patrick Murphy was doing in Tillman O'Brien. You know, he made sure his officers were out there among the people. And I got to give Marion Burr a little credit. I know I've been hard on him at times, but I love the guy. But if he had just listened, he'd been one of the great black leaders of all time because he had that charisma and personality and how to deal with people.
And that's what's necessary.
Yeah.
That's what's necessary. I mean, when you go back and look at those programs that you mentioned with Pat Murphy and Officer Friendly, for example, you didn't have some of the problems we have now because of that rapport that was established with the community and the kids. And you could accomplish things, but when you have that sometimes hatred, you can't make any progress.
And Gil, one of the things too we got to realize that the racism that is being recycled is that we still got to look at it objectively. That's why I came up with the phrase that every black face I saw was not my brother, and every white face I saw was not my enemy. Because there were a lot of good white folks out there who were trying to help enhance our growth in the community. And then there were black folks who were trying to hinder it, and are still hindering it today.
Today. No, it's I remember when I first heard you with that statement, I found it to be quite profound and interesting, and it's appropriate for today. Just as much as it was when you started that.
You know, the thing about, man, when you are a trailblazer and pioneer, as I was and as I am, you got to take risks. If you're going to help people, you got to take risks. And if you're going to be a trailblazer, that means going first.
Right.
So you got to take risks. When I talk to people, and they get kind of upset sometimes when you really tell the truth about Marion Burr or President Obama, I think they were both great men. But you know, when you look, you can measure how great people are by the people that come behind them that become a success. Look at their track record. When I think about Marion Burr, and I tell them, everybody, you know, oh, Marion, I love him. I love him too. But when you look across the river where you live, where I have lived all my life, there was no economic growth over there the whole time that Marion was in office. You understand? No economic growth, man. And how are we going to grow without making a dollar? Success today is measured by how much money you make.
Exactly.
And they keep us out of the game by keeping us financially poor.
You're absolutely right. I mean, you can look at the, far southeast now, and how much gain has been made. It's the efforts to make it economically feasible and sound. They don't exist. Sure, you get something like the Ark or something like that, but that really doesn't touch on the economic part. So much is still lacking.
And we got to realize, man, that all we got to do to understand our problem is look in the mirror. You know. And white folks, like I said, don't have a patent on racism, man.
No.
They do not have a patent on racism. No. When I look at what's going on now, when we're talking about people that going to have these forums, these police community relations forum, youth violence forum, they don't invite folks out like me.
No,
they don't want to see me because I know I've been there.
It makes you question what is the real agenda.
That's right. That's right.
Do we just want to write down things that we did, or do we want to substantiate and have examples of just what was done, and what were the results? And I'm afraid there's been no improvement.
No improvement. And you hit on something. Now getting back to Marion Burr. Marion came up with a program right after the riots of where they had policemen playing softball with the thugs. You understand? Policemen in their different districts would get these teams and Murray's have it citywide. You understand?
Right.
And I remember when we had the police to come out and practice with the kids on Harrison Playground, which was pretty rough area at the time.
Right.
They wouldn't take their guns off. They wouldn't take their guns off. So I got Andrew and myself convinced. Hey, man, you guys put them guns in the car, man. Come on, anybody. Nothing's going to happen out here. And guess what? We ended up winning the citywide championship. And that forged a relationship, man, between those policemen and those guys on the playground. You understand? And that's because I remember the guys who used to see me, Andrew would come by the playground, they see me out there talking to Andrew. They give me the blues. Man, what you doing talking to the cops? I said, man, look, I grew up with him. You understand? That's my man. You understand? And they had to become comfortable with me because they had that stigma.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
That,
right.
You know, I was passing on information about. That was not it. And they got a chance to see that by Murray putting together that program. And guess what? The program was disbanded the next year.
Oh, wow.
The next year.
Yeah,
because the powers that be didn't want it.
This is the first I'm hearing.
Is that right? Well, I got that up on my blog, and to show you the pictures of me and the cops and the kids, man. Where Bill Raspberry wrote a nice column on it. The Afro, they disbanded the program, man, because the top echelon, like the FOP, the Fraternity Order of Police, they didn't want no community relations. They wanted that to be us against them, man. And that type of mentality still exists today. Right here, man, in PG County, right here in the district, man. Because we live it. And we're not saying we know nothing we don't know.
Every day. Every day. Every day.
I just read Gilbert. I done seen all the mayors, you know, from Walter Washington to where we are today.
Right.
And now it looks like we're hustling backwards again. Miriam Bowser is running and without any opposition. She has problems in the hospital administration over here. You understand? Big problems there. She has problems in the educational system. Problems with cronyism. This all comes out of the Washington Post, man. She hired a cop as the chief of police who had a record of being a drunk, being a woman abuser. I mean, this is in court records, man. And she pushed this man into being chief of police in the nation's capital, man. You understand? So it's things like that. And when I hear people talking about, man, we got to get out there and do this, we got to get out there and do that. Well, when this man's name went into nomination, I had a friend of mine who was an inspector on the D.C. Police Department that worked in where they kept all the records and everything, right? He was in charge. And sure enough, man, there was a problem with Chief Newsom as assistant chief where he abused his powers with demonstrators. I don't know if you read about that or not. He arrested them wholesale. You understand? And they end up suing the district government. Well, guess what? Those records that were in there on Assistant Chief Newsom suddenly disappeared. And my man watched them as the records walked out of the building. And he told me, he said, hold, y'all can't do that on my watch. And it got back to Newsom and Chief Lanier. And guess what they did? They demoted him.
Oh.
Yeah, demoted him. He brought all that information to me. I passed it on to Eleanor Holmes Norton. I passed it on to Murray Che. I passed it on to Bowser. I put it in the hands, Gil, not have it delivered. This is what's happening, man. But you don't want this guy as our chief.
What does that say?
What does that say? They put him in. And Gil, when I went down to testify, I ain't see all these other brothers that claimed they, you know, hey, man, we out there in the war zone. I'm looking around, I'm the only brother from the city down there testifying against this guy.
That's disgusting. And
had one councilman to vote against him because I gave him the same paperwork that I gave Miriam Bowser, Eleanor Holmes Norton, and Murray Che. I gave him Grosso. That's the Councilman Grosso. He sent his representative, the girl who works in his office, say, ask Mr. Bell to pass that information on to me. And when the vote went down, he was the only one that voted against it.
It's disgusting.
It is disgusting, man. So when you start talking about leadership and people talking about how much progress that blacks have made in the city, you know what the progress they're talking about? They're talking about their progress. They're not talking about our progress overall, Gil.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't looked at it from that point of view.
Oh yeah.
But it has to be that. It can't be ours as a city, and
if it's not but one or two of us making it.
That's right. That's
Can
right.
Be, man.
That's right. It cannot be.
It's
No.
it's so sad, man, that when I see our young people and the people that's supposed to be leading them, you know, because our young people are looking to us for leadership.
Exactly. Well, you hit on the key word when you said leaders. That's I'm finding, especially in the school system, that that's what's lacking.
Mm-hmm.
So now, if your leaders are not up to par, and in some cases they don't have a clue, what do you expect from those who are under them? What do you expect from building principals? If you don't know what things need to emphasize, one of the things that I maintain that one of the reasons that you have some of the things happening today, like the pressure on teachers to produce and children to achieve, that has led to some alleged cheating on tests and graduating kids who shouldn't have graduated. One of the things that I think about is those things that have caused that to happen. And I think that there are a lot of things that have gotten away from that basic teaching of reading and math and those basic subjects, because teachers are bombarded with a lot of paperwork and things that don't directly relate to what's going on in that classroom. So consequently, the kids aren't learning them that like they should, and you end up having these things to cause, not that that's any excuse to do any cheating, but you have to look at what's going on internally. And you have to examine. I had a friend that used to say everything new isn't good and everything old isn't bad. It's a combination of using those strategies and procedures that have been successful and repeating them and weeding out those things you've learned that haven't been productive, haven't helped. But all that goes back to leadership and people who have the knowledge and, more than that, the experience to know what makes good sense. You know,
Gil, we're running out of time as usual, and always like this. But it really bothers me that in this city, of all these talented people, that we got a mayor that's getting ready to run again with no opposition. And you and I know why there's no opposition like Vince Gray. Vince Gray, there's no way that he can come back and run for mayor, because we know what the real deal is, and he know what the real deal is. And he know that's going to be held against him. But just because he's not going to run, we got to have some other talented people out there, man, to make this an objective run for office, man.
Right. So
we got to have people in there that care about us.
And anything, and sports is a typical example. People are more productive and do what they should do when they feel that there are consequences, serious consequences for when they don't do it. They don't do it, and competition is healthy, and to go unopposed. So far, I haven't heard of any leader that's about to surface. It's gonna be real interesting.
Well, Gil, we got to do this again. There's no doubt about it.
Anytime,
We got a lot
because
to
these
cover.
are things that are close to my heart. You know, when we talk about DC firstly, and then secondly, we talk about our youth. Those are things that have been my life.
Yeah, I know they have. I've been a witness.
So I would welcome the time to come back and talk with you.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be it for the Legends of Inside Sports, and I want to thank my special guest, my special friend, Dr. Gilbert Hoffman, and he will be back. And I want you folks to remember as we go out of here that every black face you see is not your brother, and every white face is not your enemy. Until next time, I'm Harold Bell, and you can color me gone.